Hi, I'm Erin Lundy.
And I'm Madeline Walden, and this is
Aquarium of the Podcific,
a podcast brought to you by Aquarium of the Pacific, Southern California's largest aquarium.
Join us as we learn alongside the experts in animal care, conservation, and more. Welcome back to Aquarium of the Podcific. I'm Erin Lundy, Conservation Coordinator for Mammals and Birds and Animal Care Specialist.
And I'm Madeline Walden, the aquarium's digital content and community manager. I'm very excited about this episode. This is our 8th episode, so of course it's going to be about octopuses.
Ooh, good.
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
got
did
that.
you really? I specifically said, no, we have to wait until the 8th episode for octopuses. That's funny.
I feel really dumb. I literally just got that. And I was like, oh, that's such a good coincidence. And then I realized it was not at all.
I very particularly planned it. But this episode is really, really great. We hear from 2 octopus specialists, our very own Brooke Hernandez, who's an aquarist here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and one of our longtime collaborators, Warren Carlyle from Octonation, which is the world's largest octopus online fan club.
You know how I can tell you're excited about this episode? Is usually you go, Erin, what are we learning about today? And today you just fully introduced it by yourself. You're like, listen here.
I don't have a favorite episode or a favorite animal.
I understand.
Not at all. No, I'm really excited about this episode because we get to hear from someone who takes care of our octopuses on site, specifically our giant Pacific octopus. That's Brooke. And then we have Warren, who just loves octopuses and has done so much with his nonprofit to educate the masses on octopuses and how amazing these creatures are. Warren always says, octopuses had a really bad PR for a very long time. And so he's kind of taken over, and I really refer to him as just octopus's PR manager.
That's a good title. I wish I could be someone's, like an animal
you can
species.
Be mine.
Oh, okay. I'm Madeline's PR manager. She really likes octopus. Well, I think, I really love that Brooke gives us some perspective on what it's like directly caring for one individual species of octopus, because our GPOs have a ton of personality, and apparently each individual is also very different and individualistic. Madeline gets to meet all of them. I get to meet 0 of them. Well, that's not true. I think I've met Grindy, and Grindy was wonderful.
I know. So in this episode, we mention Grindylow, the giant Pacific octopus, and we recorded this episode at the end of June, and we unfortunately just lost Grindy. So we'll refer to her in the episode. Octopus lifespans are very short, unfortunately, but they're amazing animals despite their very short lifespan. And I really think that's for humans' benefit, because if they lived any longer, they would just take over the world. They're too smart.
Honestly, I'm kind of down. I would
kind
love
of
to see what they did with the world, it's your turn. What you got going on?
Warren would be very slimy.
Yeah, and what's your problem?
A lot of silly string poop everywhere.
I also really liked our conversation with Warren a ton because I didn't know very much about different species of octopus, and he really is a great PR manager for them, because he's giving me stickers, he's talking about how much he loves octos, and for someone who didn't know as much about them, and Madeline's always been the octo super fan, and I've, kind of just known that they exist but not know too much about them, I fell in love with them just listening to Warren talk about them.
They're really amazing creatures. Well, we're going to get into it. It's a little bit of a longer episode, this one, because we have 2 interviews, but I think they're both very enthralling, so I think our audience will really enjoy it. So let's get into it.
So today we have on Brooke Hernandez, who works with our octopus here at the aquarium. Brooke, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. I work with the giant Pacific octopus here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach. I'm an aquarist too, and I've been here since July of 2021.
That's awesome. And so you have quite a long history with the octopus that we currently have, right? I think her name is Grindy.
Yes, Grindylow is our female octopus that we have at the moment. She is 42 pounds, and she's been at the aquarium since February of 2022. So she's been here for quite a bit.
How did you get started working with octopuses, or specifically the giant Pacific octopus?
So I kind of have a weird way into the field. It's not super conventional. For me, I didn't know I wanted to do this job. So in college, I actually have my degree in English, and it wasn't till, it's super weird.
I didn't know that. That's
fun.
It's
like Brooke trivia. So basically I took a scuba course my last semester at Cal State Fullerton. I just needed to eat some units, and it sounded fun, and I absolutely fell in love with the ocean.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so
Your whole life changed.
Yeah, basically, I had a nice job. The college I worked at lined up, and I pushed it all aside. My parents were very upset. And I took a minimum wage warehouse, like fish house job at the nearest facility that would hire me. So from there, I pretty much was just open to taking whatever animal job opened up. I wasn't picky. I wanted it to be marine animals, but I wasn't even sure which ones. The kind of mentality I've had in the field is that you don't know if you want to work with something till you do. And there's been a lot of things that surprised me that I thought I wanted to work with, and a lot of things that I realized I did not like working with as much as I thought I would. So it's
That's a funny realization to have after working. You're like, I don't vibe with this animal.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. You think you want to work with something. I really thought I wanted to work with sea turtles. That was what like my heart was set on. I was like, yes, sea turtles. And then I worked with them, and I loved them.
It was your thing.
I love them. I prefer the much more clever animals like the octopus.
I think it's so funny that a lot of our colleagues have degrees in a variety of things.
Yes.
You have a degree in English.
Someone has a degree in advertising. You know,
really?
A lot of different paths to this field. And, you know, a lot of people come from like, oh, I just volunteered one day and I really liked it. And then I decided I was going to do this. And for me, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I went a totally different way and went with marine mammals, and now weirdly know a lot about frogs. Like, you know, like nothing is
I was
super
gonna say
linear.
same thing. Like, you know, you start working with one animal, and suddenly you're working with an animal that you didn't
Is a
plan to
frog.
work. Is a
Yeah.
frog. Everything
All of a
goes
sudden.
back to frogs.
Everything, all roads lead to frogs in my mind.
Well, and you can be like a cat person or a dog person, so you can be a sea turtle admirer and not someone who wants to work with sea turtles directly.
Yeah, absolutely. From afar, they're beautiful.
We had
Absolutely
Adam
beautiful.
on. He seems to really love working with our turtles, although he maybe shares some frustrations about maybe them being less clever than some of our other animals.
Perfect. So I'm not alone in
You're
that.
not alone, but it really seems like he enjoys taking care of our sea turtles, and it's funny that personality types really seem to gravitate towards specific animals.
I don't want to say this.
Sorry, one second. You have a spider under your collar.
Oh no,
Let me
I'm
get
so
it
scared.
for
Oh my
you.
gosh.
I'm so sorry.
I
It
want to
just
keep this in the
distracted me.
podcast.
Oh, it's a
because
cricket.
Oh, it's a cricket.
Oh, thank
Okay.
goodness. Don't worry, it's just one of my bugs.
I'm so sorry. I saw it and I was like, I can't let her be bit.
Can you leave this in the podcast? Because I actually
covered in crickets. What happened?
I was
Did you
feeding
feed
my
the frogs?
frogs.
I thought it was a spider.
If you want to work with frogs, you might just carry around crickets in your collar and not even.
I got scared when I thought it was a spider. Not that I'm. We have some spiders, you know, like obviously every corner. And I was doing some construction. Like, it's been a weird day, but I was helping build something in the spidery part of the aquarium, so I got scared that it was a spider. But
a cricket, no
yeah.
problem.
Well, the last time I fed my frogs was this morning, so he's probably been riding around with me. all day.
I felt bad because it's like you guys were on a roll and I
No,
didn't want to
please.
interrupt
No.
anybody, but I was like, I'm 99%
can't-
sure there's a spider
Can't
on
let
her.
a bug
Like,
just crawl on her as much as she
Brooke is
she
a real
wants
hero.
to.
Yeah. She's,
Oh, that's my friend.
oh, that was a cricket. We're fine. Don't worry, he safely escaped into the studio somewhere, so now there's a cricket in
yeah.
here. Okay, it's fine.
What if we just hear him in future episodes? Just
That would be cute.
that's great. What's it? What we should name him? Brooke, you discovered him. What's his name?
His name's Brooke.
His name is Brooke.
That's
Oh,
Brooke, the
God.
cricket. Every time we hear a cricket, that's Brooke.
Mhm.
Hey, Brooke, you're being a little loud.
Brooke number
We're trying to
2.
record. We're trying to record something here.
That
Well,
is the funniest thing.
until you
thank
know
you for
were.
trying to save my life.
I mean,
honestly.
I'm relieved it was a cricket because I was just
on
going to
my
grab
neck.
it and chuck it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I didn't even see it. Good spot.
It was on my neck.
I was just staring at you.
I'm so sorry I lost
Watching it.
all of our
No, you're
mojo.
good.
No, same. No, that was amazing.
It was a welcome
Um,
interruption.
What I think I was going to say is you were wanting an animal who was a little more challenging, a little more clever, and I think that you probably now work with the most clever, maybe even the most intelligent animal at the aquarium.
And very different than anything else. They are their own
Yes.
thing.
Yes, definitely. It's nice because I have an animal that keeps me on my toes, even. There's no 2 days are the same. No two octopus are the same. We have 2 right now. Our small one is named Goji. She's just a baby. She's 5.5 pounds. And then we have Grindalo, our large lady, who's 42 pounds and full grown. And the 2 of those ladies have completely different personalities. They have completely different relationships with me. They have different likes and dislikes. Every time you work with an octo, it's starting from scratch, which I really love. I love the challenge of it. I love the process of trying to build a bond with that animal and get to know that animal and get that animal in turn to know and, like me as well. I prefer when they like me.
It certainly helps with the care.
it's certainly more fun when they like you. So
How would you know if an octopus liked you or disliked you?
you'd probably be more likely to know if it doesn't like you.
It would be clear if it
It'd
didn't
be pretty
like you.
clear. Stay away from you. And what's honestly the most impressive thing about them is if they don't like you, they have the siphon on the side of their head. So they'll fill that whole mantle of theirs full of water, and they will shoot water out of that siphon. And they can go up to 20 miles an hour, and it's like pinpoint accuracy. Like I have seen them, like with someone they don't like, hit them in the face, and that person run, and the octo continue like and just like nail them. So
Over and over and over again.
if they don't like you, they will show you the siphon.
That's funny.
So-
What-
Okay, but as someone who has been hosed down by an octopus before,
Ooh,
I
it
will
was
say
Madeline that
maybe
they
it's
did that.
maybe it's not all only that they don't like someone. Maybe
You're right, you're
there's
right.
other reasons that they use
Kinda
it
sounds
too.
like they don't
right?
like you, Madeline.
Right?
Yes,
Tell
no,
me-
absolutely.
Tell me the octopus likes me.
Absolutely.
She was
Sometimes-
holding my arm while doing that.
She
so.
was keeping you, so
was-
she could
Yeah,
she
she wasn't letting you escape.
I don't know what you thought was happening, but
I
it's
thought
pretty
we
clear
were
to me.
good. I thought we were friends.
It's that big brain energy there.
I know.
But no, they do also use it as an expression of like I say, like big feelings. Sometimes when they're really excited or they're really mad or any big feelings, they'll use it. But if an octopus continues to use it on the same person over and over and over again, that is a sign of dislike.
What is that adaptation for? Why do they have those siphons to begin with?
So out in the wild, their siphons are used for swimming and getting away from predators. So they'll fill, their head up with all that water. They'll push it out the siphon, 25 miles an hour, and then they'll actually move that siphon between the two sides of their head to help them steer through the water.
I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. Every now and then you'll see our octo playing with their siphon in the exhibit too,
That's
which is
kinda
really
cute.
fun to
That's really
watch.
cute. They're amazing.
Huh. I'm learning something new every day.
Let's talk about their anatomy a little bit more. So I want to hear more definitely about the two octopuses we have and their differences, but I think this is a good time to talk about what is an octopus? What makes an octopus?
What's a siphon?
What's a siphon? Yeah.
All the
yeah.
things. What is this? These are not body
Yeah.
parts I have, so it's hard for me to imagine some of these things.
They my understanding is that they have 3 hearts, they have blue blood, they have an ink sac, they have a beak. That sounds like an alien to me. What makes up an octopus?
I do definitely feel like they're like the closest thing we have here to extraterrestrials, for sure. Honestly, what doesn't make up an octopus? They have just an array of amazing things about them. I feel like even I've worked with them for years, and I feel like I learn something new about them all the time. For starters, they have a beak instead of a mouth, which I think is really cool. So instead of like a shark or a dog with teeth, they're going to have a beak like a bird, like a parrot would, which is a really creepy kind of cool fact, especially when you take into account that that beak is lined with a neurotoxin, and that neurotoxin causes like numbing and then tissue breakdown in their prey. So when they eat, they don't even take bites. They actually use that toxin to break down their prey into like a jelly, and then they slurp it up, which is so creepy, but so cool.
I keep learning things about animals. Like every time we do an episode about an animal that I'm really unfamiliar with, like the jellies and sea stars and the octos, I'm just like, what's happening right now?
You're making that up.
They just make everything into jelly and then drink it? Like that seems...
Yep.
Wow. So they sort of digest their food out of their body by like biting it and then having it break down those proteins and those things.
Yes.
That's really
Pretty similar
interesting.
to some other animals we've been chatting about, like our
I
sea
think cucumber
stars.
does a
Yeah,
similar thing too,
cucumber.
right? Where they digest externally, but
Differently, but yeah.
do they ever take like bites with their beak, or will they just kind of?
They can. They're fully capable of doing so, and they can every now and then, but for the most part, their digestion is going to be breaking it down and slurping it up.
So, do they? Where? Obviously, the food goes in the beak. Where does the poop come out?
So the poop comes out, and that's another callback to the siphon. The siphon is super important in the octo. It does a ton of different things. It helps them with breathing. It helps them with steering. It helps them hit keepers they don't like. And it also helps them poop. So the funny part about octopus that people love and don't necessarily always know is that they poop like silly string, basically. It's like a little party in their tank. And what's even cooler from the keeper standpoint is that I can go to another facility, and if I see octopus poop, I know what their diet's composed of because the color of their poop is actually really indicative of what they're eating.
Ooh.
What color is our octopus's poop? Sorry if that's personal, Grindy, but it's time we talk about it.
I can look up the chart to see like what it is. Right now, they're both pretty gray, and there's a little bit of red in there, so that's usually...
Typically it looks like
Gray
gray
and
silly string. What a party.
So octopus has a beak, then they bite things, and a neurotoxin comes out of their beak and digests whatever it is that they've bitten. Is that neurotoxin like a paralytic for their prey item?
Yes, so it's basically a numbing and a paralytic for their prey item.
Okay.
But that's also why we're very mindful of our hands as keepers, because it would also serve as basically numbing to us. So we might not be able to pair that with the fact that the water's 47 degrees and we lose feeling in our hands pretty fast. We might not actually be able to feel ourselves getting bit, which is why we have to keep an eye on our hands.
Definitely. Does every octopus have that neurotoxin or type of neurotoxin?
I know for a fact that all of the giant Pacific octopus do. Not super well covered on other species. Sometimes being the octopus keeper, people are like, oh, what's the common octopus? And I'm like, I've never worked with that one.
So they're super different too, like interspecies
Oh,
differences.
for sure. You're like, I know everything about this one.
Yep.
This goji
this one.
I got.
Okay.
That's awesome.
So we know about their beak. They have 8 tentacles.
So they have 8 arms, and the difference is going to be that the arms are basically, when you have tentacles are used for stinging. So an octopus and arms are non-stinging. So the arms are used for basically grabbing things, and they will bring things to their mouth. Or if you're like a jellyfish or something, you have tentacles because those are stinging.
So they have 8 arms. They have a neurotoxin-lined beak. They have a big head. What's in their head?
Is it a head?
So their head is called their mantle, but it's basically their entire body. So it's a head in quotations, but really it holds their 3 hearts. It holds their brain, or 9 brains, but we can dig into that one in a little bit. It holds their liver, it holds gills. So it's basically their entire body, but it basically is mounted on top of them. So it looks kind of like a head, but it's called a mantle.
It's
So
everything.
all their organs are contained in the mantle, which is what looks like a head to us. And then they have 8 arms that are each individually controlled by, sounds like maybe they each get their own brain if they have 9.
That's exactly how it is. Each arm gets its own microbrain, and then they all talk to basically the central brain in the mantle. So when they say each arm looks like it has a mind of its own, it literally does.
So cool.
That's
And
wild.
we love to take advantage of that too, because we want to keep them enriched and happy. So sometimes when we're feeding them, we'll put a different food item in each arm, and you'll have to see them process each arm separately for what is this? Do I want it? Do I like it? Do I toss it?
Oh my goodness.
And then on top of that, their arms are covered in those suction cups, which are tasting their food before they even make it to their mouth.
Yes, so each arm has about 250 suction cups. The total is right around 2,000 or so on the animal. And each suction cup can individually taste and smell, and it can move about 10 pounds of force each. So you combine those together, they can move unbelievable amounts of weight.
Strong.
Strong octos.
Very strong. And additionally, with them being able to taste and smell, it's how they pick what food they want. It's how they tell keepers apart.
They'll taste you to tell you apart.
That's one way they can do it. They also have pretty good eyesight, too. So if you ever look at a giant Pacific octopus's eye, it has a slit, a horizontal pupil, and that's because they've actually got on each side a 180 view. So they basically have nearly a full 360 view at all times. So you cannot sneak up on an octopus. They can see all around them.
You should see Erin's face right now.
I am processing. All 8 of my arms are telling me different things right now. This might be a silly question. Do their arms ever get in disagreements with one another?
No, they all report to the same boss.
Okay.
So they're like a team. They're like coworkers working together.
They're good coworkers that never disagree and all report to the central boss, which is in the mantle.
Yes,
We're
exactly.
learning. We are all
got this.
learning a lot.
It's like
about
a
this.
really good cultured team,
Wow.
basically.
Good for them, honestly.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I wish I had 8 arms.
We need a good org chart for an octopus and all the arms.
Yeah.
So each of the suckers are They're called suckers.
Yes.
On their
Suckers,
tentacles.
suction cups, any of those things.
Each suction cup can move about 10 pounds of force.
Yes.
Does that increase as they age or with the size of the suction cup? Like, does the size of the suction cup mean
Yeah.
anything to them?
Yeah, definitely. So, like, that's like the average size an octopus can move. I don't think little baby Goji's 5-pound body is going to be able to move 10 pounds per suction cup.
Like lifting a car. And
she
Wow.
had trouble with her crab this morning that was kind of
Aw.
big. So, that's a general fact for the general sized octopus can move about that much.
I don't
So,
know. We're going to see Goji in there and she's just lifting things,
Yeah.
lifting weights in there. That's crazy.
Actually lifting your
curling rocks.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. So we're at an interesting time, and by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have released and announced Goji. But we have 2 octopuses, one behind the scenes currently and one on exhibit. Let's talk about kind of their lifespan and why we would house 2 octopuses at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually the perfect time to have this conversation. They're kind of in a time of like almost a yin and yang. We're getting the start of one life and then the kind of the winding down or the end of another. So for starters, we've got Grindalo, our 42-pound female, and she's beginning to show signs of senescence. So senescence in an octopus, what basically happens when an octopus meets the age of sexual maturity, the females will lay eggs, and the males, even if they don't have another octopus to reproduce with, they will begin the end of their life, which is called senescence. So for the ladies, they'll lay eggs, and they'll go ahead and guard those eggs for the remainder of their life. They'll start refusing food, they'll refuse play. Their only job is to focus on those eggs and rearing them. And with the males, while they don't have eggs to necessarily cover, they will stop eating, they'll stop interacting, and they'll slowly start kind of decaying is an aggressive word, but it is kind of an aggressive process. So right now, Grindy is in the pre-signs of that. She's still eating really well. She's still interacting really well. By the time this airs, though, that might not be the case.
Yeah.
On the other flip side of the coin, we have Goji, who's brand new, 5 pounds and bright-tailed and bushy-eyed, ready to see the world, I think
Ready
I
to
said
eat
that
a
wrong.
crab.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yeah.
There we go. See, I don't work with mammals, so
No bushy tails with the octopus.
none for me. But she's got her whole life ahead of her, so
And speaking of that life, I mean, even with an animal like Grindalo, who's so much larger than Goji, the lifespan is still relatively short compared to humans or maybe compared to other animals at the aquarium.
oh, absolutely. I mean, truthfully, they say GPOs live, for between 3 and 5 years, but the 5 years really reserved for those GPOs in really cold Alaskan waters, and it's not seen very often. It's truthfully closer to 3 to 4, and if the females are going to be protecting eggs for months on end, you're going to see senescence right around 3. By the time we get the octopus, they're already subadults, so we're lucky if we have them for a year and a half, which is kind of a crazy turnover when you consider what an
Yeah.
amazing animal they are and how bonded we get.
It's hard every time. I've been lucky enough to work with Brooke and work with their animals up close too, and it is a bummer every single time, but it's kind of like, at the same time, I think if octopuses lived any longer, I think they would just take over the whole planet. But yeah, we care for those animals, even though that their lifespans are so much shorter, and they are charismatic. They do have, their own personalities that really shine through. I think of Groot, our one of our past giant
was a
Pacific
great
octopuses, who is a really special animal. And they're all special, but I feel like I had a good connection with Groot, and then
Yeah,
through
Groot really liked you.
Yeah.
No siphon spraying.
a little bit, a little bit.
It was big positive
Yeah,
feelings, not
exactly.
big
Big
negative.
I know,
feelings.
big feelings. I had big feelings about you too, Groot. But to the point where, when Groot passed, I think it's always really important for us to be transparent with our fan club for our animals. When Groot passed, we got so much love from our audience. It said, Groot helped me get through the pandemic. I learned so much about octopuses because of Groot. And so these animals are making these huge impacts in their short lives. And I just think it's so amazing that we get to be a part of that.
Yeah, Madeline sent me a TikTok that she sent me the comments of the TikTok from Groot.
Aw.
Absolutely wrecked me.
Oh, yeah.
I was like at my desk at work, like
Oh,
trying not
no.
to sob violently.
I know, they're really, really special animals, and I'm so lucky to be a part of telling their story. And I'm excited to continue telling the stories of the animals we have still. I think they're absolutely amazing creatures. I don't have a favorite, but They're kind of my favorite.
Sounds like you have a favorite.
In the first episode, they do say our sea lions are my favorite, but when it comes to our fish and invertebrates, it's for sure the octopus.
Well, so we talked a little bit about, like, when we get them, they are subadults, and they look like just a little octopus. You know, we have a 5-pound octopus out on our display right now. What is their actual life cycle? Where does it begin? How big are they when they start? And how long do they stay really microscopic, is my understanding?
So the females will lay their eggs, and then when those eggs are born, they will have hundreds of thousands of babies.
Wow.
They'll have all the babies because the survival rate is like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000. Like, it's
great.
Not great. Not great at all. Because, I mean, they're smaller than an inch. Like, they're teeny tiny. So when you see an octopus like Goji that we have here, and it's like, wow, like, you made it.
Yeah.
Like, you're a fighter.
It was definitely probably a interesting journey for
I'm sure.
to get that big. My understanding is that they start off super small like that, and then, you know, as they get older, and then there's a pretty sudden growth spurt, right? Kind of maybe around the time Goji's at right now.
Yeah.
Where she looks like an octopus. She's sizable for an octopus. How big do you expect her to get?
It's so hard to tell because I've had octopus senesce at 10 pounds and I've had them senesce at 60 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So their size, like whether it be in human care or the wild, is it's so varied. So it's really hard to determine exactly what it would be. But yes, Goji is currently in the time where she's growing basically 50% her weight, every weight. So if she was 3 pounds last time I weighed her, she's almost 6 now. Next time I suspect she'll be close to 9. Like, she's in that big growth spurt phase. So I try to basically, and I'm kind of working on like a long-term project of being more consistent about weighing them every month, so I can kind of chart out and see like where's the plateau, where can I in the future look at our octopus population and be able to say, oh, based on this growth, I think this animal will senesce at this time, and then we can do a better job prepping, you know, the public, prepping us ourselves for the next one, and kind of understanding their life cycle a little better as well.
So senescence and all of that process is relatively poorly understood in terms of when it will happen for an individual animal, and like we don't have a lot of data on that.
Yeah, there's like kind of like no way to know. Like, you know, when you're getting close, your animal's getting big to that age, they maybe aren't eating as much, they're, you know, slowing down a bit, so you kind of have an idea, but it's so hard to tell. Sometimes you think it like this animal should be any day now, but it seems fine. And then other times, like Grindy caught me a bit off guard. I wasn't expecting her to senesce as soon as she did.
And what signs did you start seeing with Grindy that indicated that she was starting to senesce?
So a lot of her senesce actually started while I was on vacation. I was gone for 2 weeks, and I came back to like, hey, your octo's been doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, that's just not a normal behavior.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important that us keepers like make sure we know our animal's normal behavior, because that's the first indication. No 2 octos are going to senesce the same. They're not going to have the same signs. But if you know your animal's normal behavior, you will be able to pick apart something that they don't normally do.
Absolutely.
So basically, when they briefed me when I got back from vacation, I was like, ooh, I think something's wrong. Yeah.
For her. At least, yeah.
It's really interesting to think of like how individualistic their personalities are and even their life cycle can be. Is there any evidence of like environmental factors that might encourage senescence, like if there's hormonal cues from the opposite sex in the water, you know, things like that might...
There's a lot of theories. I don't think there's a lot of concrete knowledge about it.
It's really nice that we have sort of someone like you who's kind of keeping track of all of their life stages and their weights and trying to put together some pattern, because I think something that sometimes gets overlooked at zoos and aquaria is we have this very focused inside look at these animals' lives that we can't really get just by going out and doing research on animals. Because how are you going to find the same octopus in the ocean again? And how are you going to weigh that animal and do all those things? But for you, you're able to get weights on the animal, understand their growth patterns, and maybe look for patterns that could indicate, hey, we need to do something different for their health care or make a change in their management to be good for these animals. And I think that that's a really important part of zoos and aquariums, is understanding these animals just a little bit better and getting information we would never get from just trying to find them in their natural habitat. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we have like an invaluable resource right in front of us that we can learn from, and it helps us provide better care for the animal. So it's just like a win-win all around.
That's really neat. Do you feel like you develop a very individual relationship with the animals and they get to know you as a person and have a different relationship with you than others?
Definitely. So I've worked in the past where a bunch of keepers share an octopus, and I've been part of that. And then I've worked where I am now, where I am Aquarium of the Pacific's giant Pacific octopus keeper, which is super cool to be able to say
What
that.
a title.
I know.
It's kind of a
That's
dream,
awesome.
to be honest. When they told me, knew I got the job. I was super happy to be a part of a facility like this. Like, I can go on and on about this facility. I absolutely love it here. I've worked a lot of places, and this place is just incredible.
Oh.
But anyways, I'm gushing.
Your
But
siphon is showing.
But yeah, no, I even in my interview, I didn't really mention my giant Pacific octopus experience too much, because every facility has like a line out the door for people who want to work with it, and I didn't think I'd be coming in and getting the coolest job, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they told me my first day I got the giant Pacific octopus. I texted my entire family, all my friends. I was like, I got the octopus. I couldn't believe it. So
It's so well deserved. You're so great with the octopuses, and it's been really cool to work with you and work with those animals. It's awesome. You're so personable for someone who works with an animal that's not necessarily personable.
That's really funny, because if you asked like most of my friends or family, they'd say I'm pretty introverted, but like I will nerd out about octopus all day. This is the one thing that I like come out of my shell and be like, you want to know about octopus?
Let me tell you something about an octo.
But yeah, to circle back to what you were asking me before I went on that tangent about AOP, basically, you were asking about like our relationship with them and all of that, and there's definitely a learning curve, not just with me learning them, but them learning me, and kind of figuring out likes and dislikes and things, because like no octopus are the same. Like Grindy absolutely loves head rubs. Could rub her head all day long. She'll sit there and enjoy it. Groot was like, he was kind of lukewarm on them. I don't know about Goji yet. We're still working on that. So
Warming up to head rubs.
exactly. I hope so. I like when they like head rubs. It's just really cute.
It's really cute. And videos of Brooke basically petting the octopus like a puppy. Like, it's very sweet.
They're like, this is nice. Little massage. So with that, I mean, I'm guessing the octopus are coming up and choosing to interact with you, and so I don't know, it's nice to see that the animals are able to have so much choice and control in their habitat and their environment, and whether or not they're going to participate in the things you might ask them to do. Like, how do you weigh an octopus?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice that they want to be there. That's part of my job, learning their likes and dislikes. So I make sure that they want to be a part of things. One of those things being basket training. So I'll actually basket train the octopus to climb into a laundry basket. We'll take it out. We'll drain all the water. I know it's a silly thought, but they just sit in the bottom of a little laundry basket. And put them on a scale, and that's how we weigh them every month. But we don't want that to be, we want as much of the things that they do to be absolutely voluntary. We want them to not only do it willingly, but also enjoy doing it. So we make sure we, fill it with lots of rewards. If they like tug-of-war, we play tug-of-war. If they like splash time, we play splash time. Whatever they like, that's my job to figure out, to learn that animal, and to make sure that we have those things available to them. And it's super helpful, too, especially when we do things like TikTok lives, guest encounters, stuff like that. Nobody wants to see you poke an animal with a stick and be like, come over here. Yeah. That's not fun for anybody. That's not appropriate for the animal. Yeah. So it's really nice to open those doors and have Grindy come flying over. She's so excited to see you.
What are we doing?
Let's go, TikTok. Here I am.
And it's so
I swear
great.
They know sometimes. I swear they know that they're on live.
She's so good on TikToks especially. But it's so nice too, because you'll even be able to show guests, like, here, I'm handing this animal food, so it's not a hungry animal, and it like tosses the food away a lot of the times. Like, they don't want the food or the toys, they want the interaction, and that's because, we build on a relationship and make sure that we're giving that animal what it wants every time it comes over. So they're very, very spoiled here at the Aquarium of the Pacific.
Awesome. It's, I think we talked about it in the sea otter episode just a little bit, about like, you can put a handful of shrimp right next to a sea otter, or you can give them enrichment that allows them to practice naturalistic behaviors, like put a bunch of shrimp in a toy and freeze it so they have to hit it on a rock forever to get all the food out. And animals so often choose to do the thing that is a naturalistic behavior or is more engaging, because, yeah, they could eat a snack, but they could work to get that snack. And for some reason, sometimes that means so much more to them and is so much more enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the octopus, I kind of have the mentality of there's no free meals. In the wild, they would spend so much of their time hunting and foraging and exploring for their meals that I almost never, unless I'm working on a training of behavior like basket training, I almost never will hand my octos a piece of food. That is boring for them, and it takes away an opportunity to really enrich that animal and give them good stimulus. Instead, I'll hide it in a Kong. I'll hide it in a puzzle feeder. I mean, I have an entire cabinet
She does.
that
A closet back there.
a
Octopuses.
3-year-old would love. It's got Lego blocks. It's got jars. It's got...
You got everything in there.
It has everything. Toy boats, you name it. We have it for them. And we use that. I mean, I believe the AZA standard for the minimum required enrichments for giant Pacific octopus is about 3 times per week because she's considered an iconic species.
Mm-hmm.
And I aim to offer my octos enrichment 2 to 3 times per day. So
That's awesome.
they deserve it. They're smart animals.
They got 9 brains. You got to tire all those brains out. That's a lot of brains.
And what's really cool too is that I've noticed when you give those animals more enrichment, they become more active, and then they're better display animals too. So it's like everybody wins.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's talk about their exhibit a little bit. I think one of the number one questions we get on social media is, has your octopus ever escaped? Is she a troublemaker? Yes, she's a troublemaker. But the exhibit I know is very secure because I think in popular culture, there's been movies about octopuses who just run around an aquarium. And that would be really dangerous for the octopus to do. So
And maybe for us.
And honestly for us too.
I would fear for the fish in my other tanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're smart.
Let's talk about those safety requirements with an animal that is so intelligent. What does her habitat look like?
So we definitely pull out all the stops when it comes to the safety of the animals. The first, and this is kind of a fun fact that a lot of people don't know, and that's that the entire top of the exhibit is lined with astroturf. So that's the one material that octopus cannot stick to for whatever reason.
Sorry, that's so funny. That's such a specific fact.
Who discovered that?
That's
Who
what
was
I want to know too.
I got every material. Oh, you know what? Bring that astroturf over
How
here.
many things did they line up?
That's so funny. What? That's hilarious. So they can't stick. I'm assuming it's because their suction cups can't quite get a grip on any one thing.
You know, it's a mystery to us all why that's the one thing.
They don't like the way it feels.
Ugh,
Don't
that's
touch it.
yucky. I don't really love astroturf either on my, as a tactile sensation. On my suction cups, I don't prefer it. That's interesting. Okay, so we have astroturf.
On top of that, so the display exhibit, the one that guests can see from the outside, that one has 4 latches on it that all lock shut. So between those 2 things, they're very well kept in there. And then our holding behind the scenes, if you were to do a guest encounter or whatever, you might be able to see that tank. That one is screwed down with metal screws all around the lid, and then those are clamped down with clamps on top of that. So
Go all out.
all out, yeah.
High security. Because they can fit through basically anything that is the size of their beak, right?
Exactly. So the beak on an animal like goji, God, I think it would probably be smaller than a quarter. So any
cute.
space the size of a quarter or bigger, she could get through
Did
with
it
her entire
squeeze
body.
their whole body through the
whole body through. It's
so
unreal.
strange. What, for anyone who's never felt an octopus, which is probably most people if I had to guess, what do they feel like to you?
Madeline's got the best description for this, hands down. I can't beat it.
A wet gummy bear.
Okay, yeah, I buy that. I get it.
And then
A
sometimes,
big wet gummy bear.
A 42-pound wet gummy bear.
depending on the octopus and its preferred style of play, they can be very sticky with their suction cups too. So a lot of times, even in the summer, I keep long sleeves on because they will leave, we call them octopus kisses, but they basically look like a bunch of hickeys all the way up and down my arm.
Yep.
And in public, it will look like I have chicken pox or some type of disease.
Brooke's
so-
disease. Oh no, those are just octopus
Of it
kisses.
as a badge of honor. Anytime I walk out of the habitat, I'm just rolling on my sleeve, yeah, look
Look
at my
at
octopus
these.
kisses.
If it's a handful of them, a little line of them, it's cute, and it's kind of look at this.
When it's your whole
But
arm.
when they've covered, when I've had 2 that tug of war, because that's how that mark ends up there. It's tug of war. So when I have 2 40-pound octopus and both of them tug of war, I end up just covered.
You're damaged.
Yeah, basically. And I'm just this is how you want to play. So
We call them octopox now. Instead.
Octopox.
These are octopox. Wow, that's really fun. So they feel like a wet gummy bear. They can be sticky or less sticky depending on how they want to engage with you. And their skin texture, at least, can that change in order to camouflage a little bit better? Or what does their skin texture do? I know they can get more wrinkly or less wrinkly.
yes, their skin is amazing. So their entire skin is covered in cells called chromatophores, and those will basically talk to their brain and decide what color they want to change, what texture they want to change. And it's super important because, like we've kind of been saying this whole time, like they're really smart, they're really like big squishy bodies, but they have no exoskeleton. They have no protection from predators other than their big brain and their camouflage. So they're able to use their brain and their camouflage to basically match their environment. They can be as dark of a shade of red as you can think of. They can go pale white, everything in between, all the browns. They can also be really smooth if they need to match like a rock surface. They can be really rigid if they need to look like algae. So they can really display a complete array of colors and textures, which is so cool because when you really think about it, they are so vulnerable just all by themselves.
Yeah. They're amazing to see that camouflage in action, or even to see that color change when you're feeding an animal and it gets excited, so it changes color.
That's my favorite part as a keeper. They're kind of like a big mood ring.
Yes, that's a perfect way to put it.
We should do octopus mood rings in the gift shop or something.
Right, coming soon to a TikTok near you.
I love
Octopus
it.
mood ring.
What does this color mean? So what do the different colors mean?
So they vary a little bit octopus to octopus, but this is one of the ways where they're generally similar. So I like the big red flashing, the big bright red color that they usually flash when we open the barn doors. That is their ready to party color. That is like, I'm coming over, I'm going to hang out, I'm going to, if I'm trying to work, I'm going to steal your tools. Like they're just, they're ready and they're there and they're excited. They have this mottled color where they're a little bit red and a little bit white, and they have this like really rigid texture, and that's usually their thinking cap color. So that's like, I give them,
So cute.
I know, it's adorable.
that's like
I'm
I give them.
thinking really hard right now.
That's what it is. It really is.
They think hard. They have 9 brains.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a lot
I
of
would
work.
actually think less if I could spread that out over 9 brains. That would be really nice, actually.
I think it's so concentrated in those 9
Too
brains.
much thinking,
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
just in that donut brain, just going around and around again. Yeah, I always recommend if you're visiting the aquarium and you see an octopus habitat and you walk by it, definitely take a second to really look, because you could just walk past it not even realizing that there's an animal right in front of you. Sometimes literally right in front of your face, people will miss it.
I am the keeper here, and I can't tell you how many times I have been like, oh my god, did my octopus escape? And I know it can't, but it's always a fear.
Where is she?
Literally just today I did it. And I was looking in there and I was like, where is she? And I was like, okay, she must just be, in a corner that maybe I can't see from display, which is really surprising because on display there's almost nowhere she can hide. Like there's a 99.9% chance that you can see that octopus and you just don't know it. So I go to the top and I'm like, I don't see her here either. She was just so well camouflaged behind this
Hiding
little
in plain
piece of
sight.
algae that like even me who knows them and like sees them every day, so please
Who
do
put
stop.
that algae there?
Who
Or
put
that,
the
yeah,
algae
exactly.
there. Yeah, exactly. Literally designed the tank myself. I mean, when she doesn't tear it apart. So if it's looking a little rough, it's her fault, I swear.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So do you ever dive with the octopuses?
Yes, so I dive. The tank water is the coldest in the building. It's 47 degrees.
That is
Yeah.
chilly.
Yeah, it's cold. It's one of the funnest things to share when you do a guest encounter because people can barely stand to touch the water, so they can't even imagine being submerged in it.
Fully in it.
But
What kind
yes,
of preparation do you have to do to dive a habitat so cold?
a lot of really thick wetsuits is kind of, and then just a lot of moxie, truthfully.
Some deep breaths.
There's a
and
lot of
bravery.
there's a lot of like, you can do this, you got this, you love your job, you love this animal.
steely resolve and a thick wetsuit. And that's
Your
really all it
big
takes.
Wim Hof breathing. Your
Yep. But I will say it really is a big draw to be able to dive with the animal, because if I had to dive that tank and the animal wasn't in there, it would just be miserable. But like when you get in there, the octopus generally loves to interact with the diver.
maybe a little too much.
Oh, absolutely. I have to bring spare tools because they always love to steal the tools. And the second you're like, here, you have this one, they're like, oh, well, I want the one you don't
They're
want
like,
me
that
to
one's
have.
not good anymore. I want that one.
Yep, they've stripped off weight belts. They're really, Grindy is actually, I'm a little bit relieved to not be diving with Grindy any longer. She really had it out for her. She really wanted the respirator out of my mouth.
Oh,
We have
So-
a video of that on our TikTok. We'll link
that
it in the
is
show
less
notes.
than ideal.
Yep.
She was like, "This is the coolest."
I mean, it makes bubbles. Who doesn't like bubbles?
She absolutely loved it, which is like, fine, it's I'll let her
Just
have
need that
it,
to
but
breathe.
yep, I need it to breathe, so I have to stop working.
Yeah.
and then wait for her to give it back, and I'm just sitting there freezing. So a dive that I could do in like 35, 45 minutes takes like an hour and a half when I'm sitting there waiting for Grindy to give my reg back.
Troublemakers. Is there any danger with diving with an octopus?
No. And it's so interesting because even when I started here, I had never actually dove with one. Other facilities, every facility has very different rules about that because they do have a mouth with a beak that could easily penetrate a wetsuit. But for whatever reason, I asked them, whatever reason, they don't bite us while we're in there. And I think it's because they don't view us, we're not a prey item. So while they like to explore the things we have in our hands and our body and our faces often, if you think the suction cup marks on the arm are weird, there's really no way to explain to people why you have suction cup marks on your face.
Across your forehead.
You know, and during COVID when we wore masks, I could, cover it, but now I'm just like out in the world with bruises on my face.
With the octopox on the face.
Yeah, it's when at least they're bruises, it looks like something happened. They get to a point where it just looks like my face is a little dirty. People are like,
you're like, nope, that's
my octopuses.
So
funny.
it's always an adventure, but yeah, they're very curious animals. They come over, they cause a lot of distraction, definitely a lot of ruckus, and no sooner do I go in there and set up the rocks really pretty and make a little beautiful algae, this and that, and create a little cave out of this, do they rip it all apart. And
that's your version of pretty. She has to live in there, and
it's her home.
She has to redecorate as she
fair.
sees fit.
It's not feng shui enough. It's like, this sea star goes here.
Yes.
So there are other live animals in their exhibits with them, right? I know there's been sea stars. There's a really cool looking blue one that's in there right now. I don't know if it's new. I just took a picture of it today.
We have two Stimson stars in there.
Stimson stars. It was crossing its little arms, and I thought it was very
Fancy.
cute.
Yes, they used to be in our Coastal Corner Touch Lab, actually,
Oh,
but
okay.
we ended up moving them into GPO to see if they would be better displayed there, because they're a really unique, rare, cool star.
beautiful.
So.
Oh, I can't wait to see them. I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, they're out and about. We have the sea cucumbers are in there. They're all out and about today, too. They've been in a great mood lately. We've got Velcro stars, which are exactly as they sound. They basically stick like Velcro, so when I'm in there diving and I try to peel one off my arm, it then gets stuck to my neoprene glove, which I then try to peel it off with my leg, and it gets stuck to my neoprene leg. And
What are they made out of? Why are they...
I don't know, but
Jen, what is the Velcro star?
Why do they do that?
to phone
What's
a friend.
going on? Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, they are unbelievably sticky. I didn't believe it till I actually experienced.
Is it both sides of them or just the bottom that's sticky?
It's the whole thing.
the whole.
The whole thing. Because the bottom side has tube feet, and the top side has the material that sticks like Velcro. So between those two things, it's just like removing it off one hand right
I feel like
onto
that'd
the
be
other.
so incredibly frustrating. We're like, get this sea star off me. But did the octopus ever interact with the other animals that are in their exhibit? Do they?
So we're definitely very picky about what we put with the octopus. In a perfect world, we'd love her to have lots of tank mates, but she would eat them all because they are
That's what they do.
predators.
monsters.
That's what they
Yeah,
do.
they're predators, and they're smart and they're fast, and there's not a whole lot that could get away from her. So we definitely keep her with a lot more inverts. She's aware of them. They share certain roles with one another, like the anemones like to eat her poop.
Symbiosis.
Circle of life.
Yep. The stars, whatever food she discards and says, I don't want to eat this today. I don't like my clam. Whatever it is she's being picky about, they'll go ahead and clean up off the bottom. So they have a relationship. It's a limited one, but in general, octopus, giant Pacific octopus are solitary animals. They're den animals. They are much happier alone. They choose to be alone. If we were to try to give, Goji or Grindy a friend, they would kill and eat that friend.
Yeah.
So they're not animals that would enjoy a tank mate. They're kind of like an only child vibe.
Except I heard that Grindy kept a pet crab for quite some time.
That was amazing. So every now and then when we do like kelp runs or things, we end up with kelp crabs on some of our kelp. So there was a kelp crab that was probably 3 inches, a good size for Grindy, something she really should have devoured immediately. So, we do have a live crab program here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and we go ahead and we usually pick up food from a live seafood market, and we allow the crabs to hunt it, we allow the octopus to hunt it, just like they would in the wild. It's great enrichment, so this kelp crab was going to be part of that, basically. I put him in the tank and pretty much figured the rest was history. Grindy would take care of it. And I noticed it was still in there a couple hours later, and I'm like, this is weird. And fast forward a few months, she never ate that crab. I don't know what it was about that one crab. It was big enough that it should have at least piqued her interest. But for whatever reason, she decided that one was her buddy. And
Were you giving her other crabs in the meantime that she would eat? Or was that kind of like, well, you still have that crab?
No, she would still get the weekly. So the ones that we do for our live crab program are rock crabs and Dungeness crabs. So we get those from the live seafood market. So she'd still get her weekly crab hunt.
She just left the one.
And she would eat those other crabs, but she just always left the one. And I mean, she eats multiple
You're
days a week.
special.
And they were roommates.
And they were roommates.
They really were.
Yeah, it was the strangest. I've never seen anything quite like
That's
that.
funny.
I'm just so tickled by that. I think
Well,
that's so funny.
Grindy moved out with Senescence, and she's in our back holding
Yes.
area, and Goji moved in, but the kelp crabs still lived in the tank, right?
Not for long.
It did for a day or two.
Until it didn't anymore.
It did until it didn't. So Goji did the natural, normal thing that a crab should do when it sees a delicious kelp crab just chilling in the tank and took care of it. So
Circle of life.
Goji got him.
Goji got him.
I should have moved the kelp crab with Grindy or something. I didn't really think to. It's just such a weird thing. I've never.
She's like, hey, have you heard from my roommate recently? It's so weird. I've been worried about kelp crab. but-
Your roommate went to a farm.
What do you mean?
And Goji is just like sucking on all the arms. Oh boy. Well,
I love that story so
that's
much.
a really good.
It's so weird. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't understand it.
Have you heard from kelp crab recently?
It's so
been
weird.
a while.
She hasn't texted me.
Hasn't texted me back. I don't know what's going on. I ate all the other crabs, but kelp crab was cool. Well, Goji got him.
Goji got him.
Yeah, Goji's got a real spunky personality.
Love
So
it.
when we give Grindy like the live crabs, she takes her sweet time. Everything's done on Grindy's time. So she would take her sweet old time, kind of mosey around, sometimes even like mess with them a little bit first. And I'm like, oh my god, can you just take care of this? Like,
Don't be mean, Grindy.
don't be mean,
Yeah.
like be natural. Goji just got her first, minus the kelp crab, her first
The
live.
incidental.
Yes, minus that one. She got her first live crab feed today since coming to our facility, and she took it down in record time.
Wow.
She's a pro.
Yeah, she's got
She's
some
like, I
real
already
spunk.
did that other crab. Yeah, this one was. I'm
Kelp
on
crab's
it.
gone.
Yeah, kelp crab. Never heard of her.
That's what I'm here to do. Remove crabs.
She was not paying rent, so she's been evicted. Oh boy.
Oh man, I'm so tickled by that story. I love it. Do you have any other octopus
Are
stories?
you
that-
tickled by the? Oh, their arms.
I'm not tickled. That joke doesn't work.
Aw.
I've tried to use it on social media
I'm
before.
a real sucker. That one works.
That
There we
one
go.
works. That's good.
Well, speaking of social media, do you want to do? We do have some social media questions for you. People on Instagram really wanted to talk to someone who takes care of an octopus because it's a really interesting job. And one of the questions we got was, "What's the difference between an octopus and a squid?"
So we kind of touched base on it a little bit, but there's going to be a lot of differences. My expertise is in giant Pacific octopus and not so much squid, so I can just say that squids have tentacles, have stinging components, and octopus have arms. So that's really the big one. Squid also have a variety of, different places they are, different temperatures. I can speak on behalf of the giant Pacific octopus that it's the largest octopus. It is in cold water, and its range is going to be basically anywhere from say SoCal, kind of loosely. They're out here, but they're not as abundant, all the way up to cold waters of Washington, Alaska, Japan. So that would be my expertise on giant Pacific octopus and me kind of dancing around talking about squid. I feed a lot of squid. I don't necessarily
Do they
work
eat
with
squid?
them. Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your cousin, dude.
We eat mammals.
That's true. I guess I really.
Adeline's spitting
Mic
facts.
dropped.
But no, don't drop it. It'll be loud.
I won't drop it. I won't drop it, Scott.
I want Scott. I'm
Scott,
sorry.
shout out to Scott.
Do they have other relatives? Cephalopods? What other cephalopods exist out there?
Yeah, so we have a few actually in the building. So I know our SoCal gallery that's going to be opening up. I know that's going to be featuring a California two-spot octopus. Our Trop Gallery just got a common octopus that has a really great personality and is out and about a lot. So you should definitely
Cheddar.
check that out. Yes,
Cheddar.
Her name is Cheddar.
Cheddar's
the common
a great
octopus.
name.
Mhm.
We had a crumpet also.
We had a crumpet. So, fun fact: all of our octopuses are named after the first letter of their species name. So, giant Pacific, all G's; common, all C's; two-spot T's; day octopus D's.
Yeah, the
All of
two-spot
it.
we have now is Tortellini. So.
Tortellini.
Oh,
You
that's
guys are so
cute.
clever with their names. I love Goji as a name too.
What's
It's
the
really cute.
cutest octo name that we've had
That we've had
that you know of? Or
that I
you've
know
ever
of.
come across?
Probably the cutest one I think we've had here that I know of is, I think Gumball was one.
Gumball.
Which is
That
really
was my
cute.
My first octopus.
Gumball was
Yeah.
my first
My
octopus.
first octopus that I met. How do you tell the difference between a male and a female octopus?
So the way you would tell the difference is if you're facing them to your left side, their right side, the third arm on the right. If it's a female, the suction cups will go all the way to the tip. If it's a male, the suction cups will stop about 2 inches shy of the tip, and that will be their male reproductive organ, the hectocotylus.
Hectocotylus.
Yes, they
That's-
got all the
that's a new
fancy.
word for me.
That's a new
It
fruit.
sounds like nautilus. Are nautilus cephalopods? What's a nautilus?
They are. They're in the cephalopod family.
Why do they get a
Yeah.
shell? How come nothing else has a shell?
I don't know.
How do you know that? How come a nautilus
I didn't
had a
make them.
shell?
They are really cool nautiluses. So the octopus is related to, we're talking about squid, cuttlefish, and nautilus. Is there anything
Cuttlefish
else?
are cool.
Yeah, cuttlefish
are
are
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of what they're related to, are they a mammal? Are they a fish? Are they a secret third thing?
Are they a bird?
Are they a bird?
That
What
would
are
be kind of
they?
neat. They do have a beak.
They're technically an invertebrate because they don't have a backbone. But it's so interesting because when you think about invertebrates, mostly they're comprised of things like anemones, sea stars. I don't want to say things of lesser like knowledge because like we don't necessarily know all
We
the
don't
ways that
understand
you
how
don't
they
understand
think.
maybe every facet of a sea star or an anemone.
They're just doing calculus in there.
But they are part of that family, which is so interesting because they're so evolved and they're so smart. And it's interesting because there's so much legislation being created for giant Pacific octopus and octopus in general because they don't fall under an easy umbrella. It's not a fish. It's not a shark. It's not a, it is an invertebrate, but it's just so much more than
Plastic,
that.
yeah. It's different. Can you tell how old an octopus is by looking at it?
Not really. So like we were saying earlier, I've had octopus senesce at 10 pounds. I've had them senesce at 60 pounds. The largest one ever recorded was a total anomaly, but it's worth mentioning that it was 600 pounds.
600 pounds?
30 feet wide. They
Wow.
could reach
GPO?
across a GPO.
Where did it live?
Probably like Alaska or somewhere really cold to
That is
live that
terrifying.
long.
That is the biggest thing I've ever...
It's like no, bigger than Parker, the sea lion. I mean, same
No,
weight,
Parker's 815 pounds right now.
Okay.
Leave him alone.
Yeah. he
But
still
he is-
wins.
he's
but he's
not
not 30
30
feet
feet
long.
30 feet, that's so scary.
It's worth saying that's a complete outlier.
Do you
and
think that was like a mutation, or do you think that maybe they lived to be bigger at
something
one point?
crazy happened with that
Was it
one.
recent?
It was a total outlier, but it is
But
worth
when,
mentioning.
Brooke, when did this happen?
I don't know
Is it
the
out
exact
there?
date.
Is it still with us? Did they find it recently within the last 10 years?
Fascinating.
Are they growing that big out there?
Stop bullying, Brooke.
I'm not bullying Brooke. I'm so terrified that there is a 30-foot
It's not going to
octopus
show
in
up
the
here.
ocean.
Don't worry. It's not going to show up in the middle of the night at your house.
One of the smartest animals in the entire world. I don't think you're understanding. It's 600 pounds and 30 feet long. It could probably survive out of water at that, like... Are they eating dolphins? What is it eating? How big is its beak?
This is my favorite.
That's tough.
I wish everyone could see Erin's
That's
full-
not okay. I'm not scared of octopus, but that's
You seem
huge.
scared of an octopus.
Yeah, just one.
specific
The
octopus.
monster octo. That's too much. I don't need to know about that anymore. Tell us about their respiratory system.
So,
the giggles.
because they're invertebrates, they breathe underwater, so they don't come to the surface to breathe or anything. They have gills, and that's basically one of the functions of their heart. So they've got 3 hearts, and they've got a couple different functions with those hearts. One's to circulate blood, one's to circulate water over their gills, which is really cool that they have so much niche anatomy.
So the 3 hearts do different things.
Mhm.
So if one's a water circulation, like I know frogs have a lymph heart, and then they have like a regular heart.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's interesting. It's funny that like as we're talking about octopus, I'm like they're a lot like frogs. They have a lot of babies.
Kind of seems
a
like
couple
it.
live.
Yeah.
They're very weird, very niche animals,
Mhm.
and now they have multiple hearts. So, man, everything, all roads lead back to frogs.
Kind of seems like it.
I've never seen a 600-pound, 30-foot-long frog.
Not
though.
yet.
Dude, when they discovered that, we are gonna make an episode about it. Where would it live? Alaska. Probably. That's crazy. So they have a lot going on just in their respiratory system in general. Someone else wants to know, how good are their senses, including their eyesight and their hearing?
So their eyesight's pretty good. We discussed earlier how they have the horizontal pupil that allows them to see basically 360 all around them. There's no sneaking up on them, which is cool. But additionally, they also have a lot of structures in their eyes that are very similar to ours. So that's why they have things like light sensitivity. So that's why even on our octopus tank, we have a please no flash photography. During encounters, we ask for no flash photography, and that's because their eyes are sensitive like ours, and we wouldn't like a flashlight in our eyes either. When it comes to another sense of theirs, I know hearing is one people ask about a lot. They don't necessarily hear like you and I do, but they can feel vibrations, so they can feel the vibrations of my voice when I'm baby talking to them. Like I,
Which is all the time.
Octopus. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's just
Occasionally.
ambient noise now.
I've had my boss walk back there before, and I've been like, "Oh, sorry, I was," and she's like, "Baby talking the octopus."
Yeah. That's
Maybe.
that's an important part of their care, okay?
She's sensing these vibrations.
Yeah.
Okay, chill.
Good vibrations.
Absolutely.
But, so yeah, they don't necessarily hear like we do, but they feel. And that's also why we ask people not to tap on the glass. That's a good practice you should have all around the aquarium. Just, being good stewards and being good to the animals and being good viewers for the animals. But they can feel the vibrations as well, too, which is really unique and cool.
How long does an octopus stay in one place in the wild? Do they have a home? Are they migratory in some way? Are they nomads and they're just going with the flow?
Little nomads. GPOs specifically.
So for them, there's not really a right or wrong answer. I can speak more generally to it. They're not migratory, so you're not going to have one that starts in Japan and then takes a summer trip to SoCal and then goes back to Japan. Like, they don't
Long
work
journey.
like that. Yeah, they're not.
They're just boarding an airplane with a little suitcase.
The submarine just latches on, goes for a ride. Yeah, no, they're not migratory. They basically are going to pick a home, they're going to pick a den, and that's going to be their home for as long as it's safe, as long as it's feasible. So, if they're pushed out by something else, if they feel uncomfortable, they might switch homes, on a weekly basis. If they're chilling and there's no one else around to challenge that territory or make them feel uncomfortable, they could hang out there a few months. And what's really cool is a great way to, find an octopus den. And, if you ever find one, you should never touch in the wild. Always, watch at a distance. All of those things, but a great way to look for an octopus den is to look for, this is so morbid, but look for the carcasses of crabs
Shells.
and
Those
lobsters
crabs,
and clams, because they will leave. They'll basically eat their food in their den, and then they'll use their siphon to kick out all the extra and the things they
discarded
don't
part.
eat.
Do they decorate their homes?
Yeah, they have been known some types to decorate a little bit, but it's mostly just getting rid of the shell of the dead animal they ate. Basically, it's like morbid
That's
decorating.
decor to some
Taking
people.
out the trash.
Yeah.
They have oddity shops everywhere.
Yeah.
I've
Same
seen
kind of
people who
thing.
have shells in their house. It's
kinda like-
the same thing.
Like decorating your house for Halloween
There
all
you
the
go.
time.
With
Aw,
what you
they're
ate.
ready.
Yeah, there's skeletons.
Just imagining a little chicken carcass just sitting in a display in my house. Yep, I ate that.
That was
little
dinner.
bones.
Except for it would be on your porch, basically. It'd be like if you opened the door and you just chucked it off your porch, and sometimes it hit your porch, other times at the lawn, sometimes
Your
it rolled into the
landlord would
street.
Love that.
Just little dead animals all over. Just throwing all my trash out my door. Don't do that.
Don't
but
do
if you're
that.
an octopus, you can. You get away with a lot more.
Yeah, octopuses,
No
they
rules.
can do what they want.
Well, Brooke, this has been a very entertaining episode. I have learned so much about octopus, including things that I'm scared of now. So thank you for introducing
a brand new fear.
a new fear into my life. I'm not scared of the ocean. Like, I've grown up basically in the ocean, but I had never known that there was a 30-foot, 600-pound GPO existing out there when I was in the ocean, and I probably would have gotten out at that point if I knew. But I really appreciate it, and
You can get through this, Erin.
I'm shaking.
You'll be back in the ocean one day.
What if Goji ends up being 600 pounds and 30 feet long? What will we do?
We would have to rehome her at about the 100-pound mark. I think that's about the threshold of what we can hold.
Goji in like blue cavern or something, just like the
That's
entire
perfect.
habitat is just
That
Goji.
actually would probably be the appropriate place for her.
That would make my job so easy. If
You
she
get a
grew
lot
to
of
be
content.
over 500 pounds, I'd be sick.
She's just the height of blue cavern.
Yeah,
She's
exactly.
like, hello. Yes.
I'll let her know we have big, lofty aspirations for
Goji,
her.
get on that. But with all that being said, is there anything you would recommend to anyone listening? How could you help out octopus in their natural habitat?
I mean, not to promote our own aquarium, but obviously supporting the aquarium, visiting the aquarium, anything like that. We do a ton of conservation work for not just octopus, but all the animals. So that's a nice, easy, fun way. You could bring your whole family. We've got awesome things here. It's a great facility. Additionally, there's a lot of resources on our website. I'm not super brushed up on them, but things like seeing when you get seafood, making sure that you're getting seafood from places where they're following sustainable seafood fishing. That's a big one. We want to make sure we're not depleting the ocean of the animals that things like octopus need to eat, so being responsible in that way. But like I said, there's tons of resources online. Our new SoCal gallery is going to be full of information and resources that actually is working towards connecting people to the aquarium and to the ocean. So that's another great place to check out.
That's
It's going
awesome.
to be exciting.
I'm stoked. I think that octopus is such a great ambassador species to, number one, other octopuses in the ocean, but also just the ocean in general. Because I think when you find something out about an octopus, I know this is true for me, and maybe you today too, Erin.
The whole
You find
time.
one thing out about an octopus and you're like, wait, keep going. Tell me more. Tell me
Like,
more.
what is this
And they're like,
thing?
this lives out there. Okay, I want to protect our oceans. I want to protect, octopus's habitats. The fact that this amazing creature is out there and it's up to us to take care of its home.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, you don't soon forget meeting an octopus. Even just seeing them move around. They're incredible animals. I'm obviously not biased at all, but they are so special and so unique that they really do serve as ambassadors for not just their species, but the entire ocean.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much, Brooke, for
Oh, of
coming on
course.
today.
Of
I
course.
think this might be one of the longer episodes because, how could we not just talk about octopus
Like
for...
I said, I could talk about them all day. I just love them so much. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
That was a blast.
If you guys are ever around the aquarium and you see someone diving in the octopus habitat, it's probably Brooke. Wave hi if Grindy doesn't have her respirator in her arms. Otherwise, Brooke's probably standing, breathing at the surface, waiting for the respirator to be returned.
Yep.
But if you see someone around our octos, it's probably Brooke, and she's
Send some
just
good
wonderful.
vibes.
Send
Yeah.
kelp crab vibes, but not Goji kelp crab vibes. Only Grindy kelp crab vibes.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke.
Yeah, of course. I did hear, and it's just a rumor, but the 600-pound one, I think, ate a couple people named Aaron. But it was just a rumor.
Your favorite food is people named Aaron.
Hi, Warren. Thank you so much for joining us on Aquarium of the Podcific today. How are you?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Warren,
Yes.
you are the founder of the world's largest octopus fan club.
It's
You're
true.
king of the octos. We're so honored to have you on our podcast today, but we have to know why octopuses.
So the story is I went to an aquarium when I was younger, and I'm very neurodivergent. Every single time I see something I liked, I made flashcards about it. And I went to the library to make flashcards about the octopus, and the librarian was like, "There's no books here on the octopus," and I was like, "Well, that's kind of weird." And so
What kind of library doesn't
I
have a book
know.
about an octopus?
Right? And so then I went to the bigger library, and there were only things that I couldn't really understand. They were academic, journals and stuff. And so I just remember after that day just thinking, wow, this is my favorite creature. I had this open loop, I guess. and just started to want to learn more and more about it. And so when people ask me, what's your favorite animal? I always say the octopus, because there's so much we don't know about them. Like, they don't really even have that many books. And that was just the story that I kept saying over and over again.
There's so much we don't know about them, but I feel like you're an expert.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I feel like that too.
Of course I am.
And I figured out too why in 2015, when Cy Montgomery wrote the book The Soul of an Octopus, you know, the first couple pages she basically says you're probably wondering why there aren't that many books, or they're not celebrated a lot. And I was like, after I read that, I was like, you're right, they're not. And she's like, they've never really had a good PR agent. And I think that's when I had it in my head that I was just like, oh, that's me.
Dream job.
Yeah, dream job. That's me.
Octopus PR agent.
I love that.
Put me in coach. Like, I will be the octopus PR agent.
I love that so much. Okay, so how did that love for an octopus grow into Octonation?
So for those of you who are listening, it's, you know, sometimes you look around for things. And I remember for the octopus, I was looking around for something to read, and I never found it. And then finally I was just like, why don't I just write what I want to read? And so I started kind of profiling the octopus as like the superhero of the sea, that they live in every single ocean, they're along every coastline, and depending on where they live, they have like this unique superpower or adaptive ability that allows them to be master of that given environment. And so I started just profiling them, and in really fun ways, and those posts started taking off and going viral, and people started telling me, this is the first time I've ever seen this species. This is the first time I've ever heard about this, you know, superpower or this adaptive trait. And I was like, I think I have something going on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just good PR.
Yeah, good PR, good story.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's such a fascinating creature, I think, that everyone is immediately drawn to because it's so alien-like. Like, we're talking 3 hearts, a donut-shaped brain, you know, 8 arms, of course, blue blood. It's got, you know, a beak on top of that. What other alien-like?
One of my
Traits am I
favorite
missing?
things is their eyes. You know, I was so captivated when I first saw one, that they have such an expression, and you kind of feel like they're considering you just as much as you're considering it and looking at it. And I remember that first time I was like, it's thinking something in there. It's like, there's
Yeah.
something going on here.
You can see, too, if you visit the aquarium, and right now we have Goji on exhibit, you can definitely see she'll get a live crab, and we kind of talked about this with Brooke. She grabs that crab, and you see her colors change, and you see her eyes kind of dart back around, and you see that process thinking. They're so intelligent. They're really amazing animals.
Yeah. And that those horizontal pupils, I love the fact that they don't really have a blind spot. They can see nearly 360 degrees around their heads. I always tell kids, imagine having like 2 panoramic cameras on the sides of your head. Like, you couldn't sneak up like on an octopus.
No, I see
and
the
I think
door
that's
right
really
behind
cool.
us.
Yeah.
You couldn't sneak up on me.
I would still. I'd find
You
a
would
way.
be able to.
I'd find
Specifically, Aaron would be able to. He'd be amazing at it. Cool, amazing. Okay, so what is your favorite octopus? Is that a hard question to answer?
It's a hard question, yeah.
You can choose like 5 if you want.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, please.
One of my favorites is kind of like an underdog or under octo species. It's like it's called the hairy octopus, and it hasn't been officially described, which means it doesn't have a scientific name. It's just called the
Aw.
hairy octopus. And our community has called them like the tube-octopus, because they have these floating hair, like they look like a pom-pom ball
We have
almost.
to look it up.
Yeah, and they look like this pom-pom like puff ball, and they're the size of your fingernail. And
Tiny.
yeah, right. They're so
so
tiny.
cute.
Yeah, and then when they move around, they actually utilize like the ocean currents to kind of like just ride an ocean current and then get to the next spot, and then and they also, their eyes, the chromatophores around their eyes, kind of like they do this sparkling pattern. So they're really like hair models. They're like fingernail-sized hair models of the sea, and not that many people know about them. If you Google hairy octus, you'll
We're
see our
on
blog.
Octonation reading.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
cool.
on Octonation reading it right
Yeah.
now. You think you're the first
Do
one.
we
Great
have-
SEO.
Thanks.
Do we have?
It's all in
Do you
PR.
guys know what the like hair-like structures are for catching waves? Does that help with bigger surface area?
Yeah, so there's so much to learn about the species. What we know, and like you can see in that profile if you look it up, is from underwater photographers. I mean, they're the ones that are out there looking at it, looking at their behaviors, and kind of reporting back. And yeah, I imagine it's to kind of like blend in with algae. I mean, they really do look like a floating like plant matter. They're considered the holy grail of octopus finds for underwater photographers. And yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Looking
They're
at that,
neat.
you would never know that was an octopus from it, especially size of a fingernail and so tiny.
It looks like a piece of coral, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There's this cool GIF on Octonation too. I'm watching. Is it
Is
a video?
it GIF?
It's a
Is
GIF.
it GIF?
GIF.
It's
GIF.
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 Grow
Go in the
up.
This
comment
is the
section.
debate we're having right now. Are they still able to change the texture of their skin the same way that other octopus? Do we not know?
as much. Yeah,
Okay.
not as much. There's another species called the algae octopus, and that one has pretty remarkable papilla, which can change the texture of their skin, but they can actually, like, it like branches out. It like goes up and then branches out even more. It's
Wow.
like these 3D structures that really allow it to kind of blend in. And it's funny because they will have these skin spikes, but also change the color of their skin, and it really does look like like they're just a walking plant.
That's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
They're so neat.
But there's, yeah, like I said, there's so many different species. As far as another favorite of mine, it's the blanket octopus. So, you
Those
know,
are
the female blanket
amazing.
octopus, what's really interesting about her is that she has like this 6-foot iridescent cape floating through the ocean, and she spends her...
She's
She's
stunning.
glamorous, yeah. But yeah, she'll spend her whole entire life floating through the open ocean, and when it's time to kind of lay her eggs, she grows biological stalks from her body. They're like these calcified or calcareous stalks that she grows out, and then she'll kind of braid her eggs into them, and then just continue floating along the open ocean until they hatch. You know,
That's so cool.
as I said, there's so many different stories. Once you get into them and past, you know, the giant Pacific octopus, the common octopus, you're like, wait a minute, what's the next one? What's the next one?
Like, you think they're weird.
Yeah.
They get even weirder.
Yeah.
How are these animals being studied? These are deep sea animals. These are animals that are not necessarily, viewable to just, regular scuba divers. How are these animals being discovered and studied?
I actually wrote a post on that the other day on our Instagram because, they haven't been studied all that much. To me, they've been on this planet for hundreds of millions of years, and so you'd think we'd know a lot more than we know about them right now.
Well,
but
we just got here.
it's true. We just got here.
Give us some time to
We're a
catch
blip
up.
on the radar. They're the OGs. But so there's a small group of, I would say, a small group of scientists. You have Roger Hanlon, you have Jennifer Mather, you have Peter Godfrey Smith, you have all of these really well-known people, and they're all out there studying different things as it relates to the octopus. And we have Chelsea Bennis, the Octo Girl, with Octonation, and she's doing incredible work with the Atlantic long arm in Florida. She did a research where she swabbed octopus bellies to kind of study their microbiome.
Oh, that's
Sounds
interesting.
So cute.
Yeah,
Yes,
because it's
swabbing
like
bellies.
yeah, because octopuses. What's really interesting about them is they don't seem to get sick. So
That's true.
they were trying to figure out like what's going on there with their microbiome.
How do they do that?
Yeah,
Give
how
me
are they
some of
doing
that.
that?
How
What's
do
going
they-
on here?
That's, for me, everything's related back to frogs, but that's such like a frog thing too, to have this like very well-developed microbiome on their skin that helps them have immunities to different things that don't necessarily come from like an internal immune system, but are this like colony of bacteria and fungus that live on the skin and help them out. And I was actually reading an article pretty recently about holobionts, which is describing an organism not as an organism, but as a community. And so for you and me, we have gut bacteria, we have all of these things that drive us, and we just don't even think about it. We're like, no, my brain's in charge. Your brain's not in charge. I wanted a croissant this morning, not because I wanted a croissant, but because something inside of
I
me
also wanted a croissant, and I had a croissant.
She did. She had
Warren
a
was
croissant.
there.
So your
We
gut
got
biome
croissants.
was telling you, and I love the
Our gut
idea.
biomes are on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
today.
There's another cephalopod, the bobtail squid. I know this is an octopus episode, but
Yeah, we can talk about a
We
squid.
can talk about cephalopods. That's okay.
they have this bacteria that's bioluminescent, the Vibrio fischeri, and it actually helps set their circadian cycle in their rhythm.
That's cool.
They actually eject it into the seabed during the daytime so they can sleep, and then it repopulates during the nighttime, and then they kind of just are like a floating light bulb. So it's like there's all these interesting things happening with cephalopods. And we feature them all on Octonation.
I was going to say, is
Yeah.
there room for any other animals on Octonation? Is
Yeah.
it just octopuses?
Yeah, we cover all of them. We cuddle all of them.
We cuddle all of them.
Yeah, so we have cuttlefish. We have we even separate. We call them the vampires because they're their own taxonomic group. But yeah, nautilus. Did I miss any squid?
Squid,
It's
yeah.
pretty much all of them.
That's pretty cool. I also love that during this whole interview so far, Madeline's just been furiously looking up pictures of each
Yeah.
one that
I know,
you're
it's
talking
so
about.
fun.
They're
Look
also
at that.
visually
They're
captivating.
stunning, yeah.
If you are in a place where you can look up the pictures alongside, you absolutely should. If you're driving, do not, please.
And we have Octopedia on our page too, so we have tons of different photos of just how they look. I mean, some of them are really, really stunning.
Yeah, Octonation's such a great resource. Definitely recommend checking it out. Cool. Well, okay, let's talk about what makes an octopus an octopus. What separates it from the other members of the cephalopod family?
They have really interesting anatomy. So they have, I call their bag of tricks, that mantle that contains like all of their bodily
That's
organs.
a wonderful way
Yes,
to put it.
it's their
Literally a bag of tricks. Mhm.
It's like, I almost think of like a kid running away from home, like throwing, that stick with a bag.
Yep.
That's like, think of that. That's like the octopus's mantle, and it contains all of their bodily organs and that one thing that floats behind them.
So cool.
And then they have their 8 arms, not tentacles, with biserial suckers that run to the very end of the arm. And the way, I guess, that you could sex an octopus is the third arm from the right on the male doesn't actually, the suckers don't run to the very end. They kind of stop, and then there's this spoon-like appendage called the hectocotylus. And if you're curious, maybe if you get to see the giant Pacific octopus on display, you can kind of like point and look at their eyes and then count the third arm from the right and kind of see if you can follow it down to the tip.
Really cool to be able to tell the difference. And maybe, if you're visiting an aquarium and it's not obvious what sex the animal is on exhibit, you can look for the hectocotylus
Yeah.
or the lack of hectocotylus.
Is it their right or our right looking at them?
That's a
They're
great
right.
question. I'm so directionally challenged. So
I'm pretty sure it's their
Their right
hand,
Yeah.
I think.
Right arm
I
side.
think so, yeah. So right now we have Goji and Grindy. They're both female, so they don't have the hectocotylus. Those suckers continue all the way down the arm. But in the past with animals like Groot, we could totally see it. It was really cool.
yeah.
Is there sexual dimorphism in any species of octopus other than the hexacotylus?
Oh yeah, so the blanket octopus, what's really interesting about them is that the male is actually the size of like an acorn. And they actually, yeah.
That really tickled me for no reason.
Yeah, an
We were just
acorn.
talking about this fabulous female
I know.
octopus with
She's
her like,
beautiful. She's huge.
and then you've
I-
got her little acorn boyfriend over there.
Yeah, I always say it's like an interesting first and last date. He pretty much only exists, like his whole entire life is spent kind of developing his sperm packet to deliver it to her, and then he swims off and he dies. But his whole
acorn.
entire life is for his moment, and she will collect many, from multiple male and kind of decide
for
which one
her.
she wants to use to fertilize her eggs.
That's so cool. So they can decide which one.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And there's also the paper nautilus, which is another interesting octopus species.
You might hear my
It's also called the-
ferociously typing in
It's
the
also
background.
called the Argonaut. And there recently, Donna Stoff actually wrote a book called The Lady in the Argonaut. It's an incredible book about the woman who studied the first ever aquariums. But they talked about the Argonaut, paper nautilus, and she actually secretes calcite from her arms and grows her own shell. And it's not
cool.
really a shell, it's more of like an egg casing, and it's specifically for, to, guard her babies while they're in the egg casing. But yeah, it's really interesting. Sometimes males will sneak up into her and just like take it for a ride. But what's really interesting about that species too is they'll ride atop the bells of jellyfish. And so we actually
Aw.
wrote a blog called like "Should You Pick Up a Jellyfish Hitchhiker?" And yeah, it's really really interesting.
Do all nautilus have shells?
So the nautilus is different than a paper nautilus. So it's kind of confusing when it comes to nicknames. But
So paper nautilus is an octopus.
Yeah, paper nautilus is an octopus.
Oh.
Yeah, it's also called an Argonaut octopus. I always said that, I always get Octonation to kind of like rename, some species because like species like the coconut octopus, rarely are they ever in coconuts because, that's not like a, thing in the ocean. Sometimes they roll in there. But they're typically there with shells. And prior to being the coconut octopus, when that paper was published, they were called the veined octopus. And so it's kind of fun to crowdsource names from the community.
What else is on your list to rename?
the Caribbean reef octopus. It's a beautiful name, but that octopus, if you go to our website too, it looks like Cinderella's dress.
Oh, well, obviously she needs to
has
be renamed.
She has this incredible webbing.
She's beautiful.
Yeah.
She's like blue, green.
The glass slipper octopus.
Yes.
Genius.
She has this deep webbing, which is interesting because they will go up to a coral and then they'll just, it's called the parachute attack, where they'll throw their arms up over the coral and just kind of like blow jets of water and kind of spook prey out to eat them. It's just another interesting, behavior of a species that's adapted perfectly for its environment.
So cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Have you ever met an octopus before?
Yes, I've met a couple. I've never actually met one in the wild. I've only ever interacted with them in aquariums. But yeah, for a while I was doing a series called Interview with an Octopus, where I went to various aquariums all over the world. And what was so fascinating was that they all have very different personalities, and they have different personalities depending on their life experiences prior to coming to the aquarium. So if they come in and they're immediately shy, might have had a little rough of a life, So it's always interesting to see. I remember I went to the one at Moody Gardens in Galveston, and her name was Lola, and it was like whatever Lola wants, Lola gets.
Truly.
It was one of the most engaging, interactive octopuses that I've encountered. But yeah, I've also been at Aquarium in the Pacific. Met the octopuses here. They're always
I'm not
a blast.
forcing you to say that. Just poking you under the
No,
table.
we actually, our most viral video on YouTube is at Aquarium in the Pacific.
Oh, you don't say.
Yes, it is.
That was a really special day.
We had over 1 million views on that.
That was
it
really
really,
fun.
really got people interested in.
Which octo was it?
Gumball?
I want to say, yeah.
Gumball.
Gumball, I think. That was my first octopus when I started working here. I think it was that long ago. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of our relationship, the aquarium, and Octonation. So we've been working together. Has it been 7 years almost?
Yeah, it's been a long
6 or
time.
7
Yeah.
years. Yeah. And I think it was just serendipitous. When did you start Octonation again?
I started Octonation in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So about a year later is when I started here, and then we just connected. And you actually helped us name an octopus before.
Yes.
Yeah, Groot.
Yep.
He's a very special guy. But Warren actually hosted was it like a poll, or did people comment what they wanted to vote on?
Yeah, we had, I think it was a reel or something like that, and we had hundreds and hundreds of responses from people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Groot won. That was
Groot won.
And Groot was a very special octopus. He's kind of was a star on our TikTok channel during our closure for the pandemic. And yeah, I always, I love talking about our past animals, but it's always, with like a hint of sadness because they have very short lifespans.
Yeah, they do.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they have such short lifespans?
I don't know. Like I said, they've been on this planet for hundreds of millions of years, so maybe like that's the best for
They
the
got it figured
longevity of like their evolution.
Yeah.
They figured it out, and apparently that's the best lifespan for them to survive. It is sad though, because there are most warm water species live less than a year. They don't see their first birthday. So it's very interesting. Most people are very surprised when I tell them, especially when you get into aquariums, because it's really hard to figure out the age of an octopus. So when you get an octopus, their size is an indication of how old they are. And so you don't really know what you're getting. And so you might get an octopus and it might be 2 years old, and then you have a year left with it. So you never really know. Like I said, their size is an indication of how old they are.
Yeah.
So.
Do you know what is the longest lived species of octopus that we know of?
Yeah, I think they discovered a species called the Muso octopus, or the warty octopus, and it was the species that broods over her eggs for 4 years straight.
Oh, wow.
Did you hear about that
Yeah,
species?
No, that's crazy.
I think they visited one in the ocean for a while, and they were monitoring over the course of 4
Yeah.
years. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't really moved.
I
from
would
her
make
spot,
the
right?
assumption, and it's so interesting down there where it's like, life is just, maybe it's more slower paced, or
Cold
but I mean,
water.
That water
yeah,
is so
cold
cold,
water,
just keeps you young.
metabolism. Yeah, I guess so.
going.
And preserved.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to say that that's probably the oldest. Want to be the oldest living.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So octopuses enter, no matter what, a stage in their life called senescence, where they begin to decline. And that happens typically in the ocean after breeding, correct? But in an aquarium setting where we're not breeding animals, it happens no matter what.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a trigger that goes off
Yeah.
in the animal. It's just, it's time.
Yeah.
Is it a hormonal thing? Do we know?
Yeah, they said that there's a hormone that's released. It's essentially, I've heard it described so many different ways, where it's like cellular suicide, or it's like, they just go into this, I explain it like a dementia or Alzheimer's like state where they just forget. They think they're changing colors, but they're not. They're fully exposed, and then they get eaten. Or they start doing things like swimming up into the water column, whereas they wouldn't normally do that. So you can always kind of tell. They start getting kind of lesions on their body too. So, yeah.
It just happens
really
no matter
sad.
what. It is a
And
bummer.
they coil. What I've noticed too is a big thing is that the tips of their arms, like really like almost like corkscrew. And we've learned that a lot from like our group members. Some of them are hobbyists, and they say that it's like a very triggering thing for them to see the corkscrew arms, because that means like
It's
they're
getting
reaching
close.
the end.
Yeah, getting close to time. Yeah, it's definitely a bummer that their lifespans are so short. But I do think that if they lived any longer, they'd probably just
Take over the world.
over the planet.
Yeah. Probably.
Which, like, kind of down for it.
I do
Bring it
wonder,
on.
Yeah.
Like, what is the evolutionary advantage for having your life be so short? I truly, some pressure must be put on them to only live a certain amount of time, but they're crazy animals in that you can tell that every second of their life they are learning something
Yes.
new and then applying those concepts probably better than I ever have in my whole life. And they have such a limited time that it seems like they're crazy intelligent just to kind of advance as much as they can. But you just got to
shorten
wonder
that
what
time.
And you could-
does them in. Like, why? 3 years down the line.
Yeah, and you can really see that learning through observation with the coconut octopus, because it'll just walk along the sea-floor, like it's called stilt walking, where they'll just get up and they'll start walking along the sea-floor, and they'll start collecting things like different shells, and then they'll figure out how to like use it to like almost like a jigsaw puzzle to cover their body so that none of their like squishy bits are like vulnerable or anything like that, and then they kind of go into their kind of predator-proof bunker and just hold those things close to them. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and they have, only a couple months to figure that out.
Yeah.
And live their life.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing.
That's nuts.
Very cool.
It's like incredible to think
nuts.
about, but also like they're related to other mollusks supposedly, right? Like slugs and snails are supposed to be relatives of them, and those don't seem like particularly intelligent animals. And so you wonder, how did this group go so far away? And maybe snails are really smart, and we
Maybe.
just don't know about it.
There's actually a really good book by Donna Stoff called Monarchs of the Sea, where she kind of breaks down the history of that. If you're interested more into that, I suggest that book. She did a
Absolutely.
really good job kind of breaking that down. And Peter Godfrey Smith, Other Minds, he breaks down, it's a very philosophical look at an exploring consciousness in octopus. It's another interesting book.
But they're primarily pretty solitary species, right? Like, most species of octopus exist solitarily.
Yeah.
And so they're not even learning behavior from other octopus. It's not observed behavior from, conspecifics, and they're like, okay, cool, that's how you do it. They just figure it all out on their own, which is the weirdest part to me. But are there animals or octopus species that live in more of a community, or is that not really an octopus thing?
Yeah, so they did interesting research into Octopolis and Oclantis, which is like they're
I want to go there.
Yeah, right. They
Let
sound so
me
much
go
fun.
to there.
You go like if they have footage from there, and they're just throwing shells at each other, and they're blasting each other with debris. So they're cohabitating, but they're not doing it in a way that's
They're not
friendly.
happy about it.
Yeah, they're not
No.
happy about it. So
can relate.
but they live in close proximity to one another. But like I said, if you see some of those photos, and we have a blog on it too, they're like blasting each other with
hilarious.
sentiment. They are hurling shells at each other, and but yeah, for the most part, they are pretty solitary creatures.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That reminded me, is there an octopus that's able to remove its hectocotylus and throw it at a female?
So
Is that
there's
a real
a lot of
thing?
memes, yeah. That's
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say that. I hate to be the person that goes, well, actually, when
No,
memes,
that's what you're
Okay,
here for.
yes.
We're here to actually the
Yeah,
octopus
but
community.
it's there's a species and it's the Argonaut, right? So the paper knot, also the female that has the shell. There's again another go back to sexual dimorphism. That species as well has a very tiny male, and so like I said, his whole entire life is dedicated to him developing that sperm packet that he finally delivers to the female, and so that arm is like pretty long, and it has its own type of sucker or like appendage, like to where it can almost crawl, or like once it detaches it's still moving and
Oh,
can
it's like
crawl.
a lizard tail.
Yeah,
No!
it can crawl into like the right area into the mantle, so that and then it'll just kind of like you know,
Aliens.
yeah,
Aliens.
right.
That's so wild.
And so it's like, okay, I know where to go.
I'm so glad that's not a people thing. That's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
That is
yeah.
cool. So that's the same paper nautilus, the Argonaut. That
Yeah.
you're talking
I
about.
can't wait to learn more about that. I don't think I've ever looked into that creature before. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks,
Lady in the
Octonation.
Argonaut, like I said, is another book by Donna Stuff. I keep bringing her up, but she's been writing a lot of good books lately. She's
Yeah.
crushing it.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, so this is probably a question you get all the time. What is the most correct term for plural octopus? Octopi, octopodes, octopuses, just singular octopus? What
Yeah,
do
so
you
it's
use?
octopuses. And when people ask, I'm just like, octopus is a Greek word, so it wouldn't take a Latin plural ending. And that's kind of where I end it. People tell me they still don't like, they're like, I just like the word octopi. I'm like, okay, you can like it.
It's not.
Great.
You can like whatever you want. You're just wrong.
Yeah, I'm just like, and so they're like, well, it's correct now. And I'm like, well, yeah, many things have been put in the dictionary afterwards because of widespread misusage, but what side do you want to be on? You know what I mean?
Do you want to be right?
If you want to be wrong, stay wrong. That's
The
fine.
dictionary will catch up.
It's actually fun to say like the correct Greek pluralization, which is octopodes.
Octopodes.
Because the puss part is foot, and so
Yes.
then it's
Oh.
multiple foot in the way you would do it.
And
in
I've
Greek
heard it
is
pronounced
podes.
all sorts of different ways, octopodes, some people say octopods, but I don't know.
Octopuses.
But we're going with octopuses.
We're going with
Yep,
octopuses.
Because Octonation says so.
Yeah, and you'll never see octopi in any research. So like I've never actually seen it written in any like sort of scientific paper.
No
whatsoever.
scientist would ever call it octopi. Well, there you go.
The
That's-
scientist at home listening to this shuts their
just
laptop.
crosses out the word octopi in the paper that they're writing. Never
Got
mind.
it. Got
No
it.
real scientist would ever do that.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Well, what's the most intriguing thing you've ever learned about octopuses? I know that's kind of a hard question to answer.
Yeah, one of the most intriguing things is the fact that, most people know that octopuses have suckers, right? But those suckers taste and they smell and they can grip objects, right? And another thing that's interesting about them is very similar to kind of like how we have fingernails. An octopus on each one of their suckers has this like chitinous cuticle. And when they want to improve their grip on things or improve their taste, they can actually start like rubbing their suckers. It's like this molting process, and then all these kind of like lily pads are like skin are kind of floating through. And so I always tell people that octopuses give themselves manicures. That's how they kind of groom themselves, is they kind of just like will rub their arms together as almost like they're concocting this evil plan. And what they're doing is that they're just improving their like grip on objects, on substrates. They're improving their sense of taste and smell. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. When that happens too, they get extra slimy
Mm-hmm.
because they're, shedding that layer of skin.
Yeah. It's
That's
fun to
really
see
cool.
that. If you're ever at the
It is
aquarium when
really
that
cool.
happens, it's a treat because you're like, what is it doing?
Party.
Just imagine
partying.
shedding all your fingernails so you can touch things better. Like, what a...
I'll do it.
I'll try it. I'll try anything right now. Kind of along the same vein of that question, what is the most interesting behavior that you know of that octopus display? Any species?
Any species? I would say that the mimic octopus is really interesting just because they still kind of haven't figured out how they have this repertoire of mimicking certain animals, like the banded sea snake or a flatfish. They actually will morph their bodies into what that species looks like and even undulate like that
wow.
flatfish,
So cool.
and just kind of like go through the water as if they're that species. And it's like, how do they know how to do that?
Yeah, I wonder if it's observing or if they're just kind of built in, because like we were saying, they don't have a lot of time to observe and to
No.
practice their mime capabilities.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of people making the assumption they're like, is it innate? Is it learned? Is it a combination of both? But they seem to be mimicking like in certain environments, like the banded sea snake, when that specific specific animals are around. So they don't just do it all the time. It's like they observe their environment and mimic whatever makes the most sense for them in that time. But there are other, like, one of the coolest things that I know about cuttlefish is that they actually did research that they have embryonic learning. So prior to even hatching, they're learning about their environment outside of their egg casing. So they actually are developing preference for food even prior to hatching based on looking and observing its environment. And they can actually decide to hatch early if there's like this chemical signaling where like other cuttlefishes are hatching and say there's a predator in there.
Yeah.
They can like just abort and just go out of there.
Cool.
And
Time to be born now.
Time to be born.
Yeah.
And you've
That's
seen them. They have them
amazing.
here in the babies exhibit at Aquarium of the Pacific. But they're so tiny, and they hatch as literally miniature adults, like
They're-
perfect replicas, just tiny.
They're really cool. Octonation has a lot of great videos of octopus eggs or cephalopod eggs, and you can see their little eyes moving around in there. It's amazing.
They're watching
they're like,
you.
They're like
See?
little Christmas lights too, because they're actually practicing their chromatophores. Those
They'll change colors.
they
in
will.
there.
It looks like Christmas lights,
That's
when
really
they're
cute.
then they're and sometimes it looks like they're moving together or they're like learning from each other.
Wow.
It's
So
really
you're
fun
red?
to watch.
I'm red. You're green.
I'm green too. That's so cool. What's the gestational period of an octopus typically in an egg? How long
It
does it
depends.
usually take?
I would say that it depends on the species. Everything with octopus, when people say, I'm like, okay, well, it's different
not
with
one
every single
answer.
species.
Yeah.
But warm water
4 years for that one.
Yeah.
4 years for that one. I mean, warm water species, you're looking at a couple months. Colder water, like the giant Pacific octopus, take a couple months. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Each one of them.
Fascinating. Is there an evolutionary reason to why they have exactly 8 arms, you think?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
That's a great
So
question.
specific.
Yeah.
8 specific arms.
And all of them have eight.
And
Yeah.
they're bilaterally symmetrical, which means they're mirror image on both sides too. I'm not too sure.
Fascinating. Is there any recent science or developments that you're really excited about when it comes to octopuses?
Yeah, I've been watching that Octopus. I just think it's hilarious. And
I want to watch.
I
that
wanna
just
watch
as,
that
like,
too.
A drama.
yeah, anytime new research comes out, it's really interesting. Because you always see like viral headlines of things going around, and when the octopuses throwing things at each other started happening, I think they do things sometimes that are like seemingly relatable to us. And so I think initially in the study, they were like females throw things at males that harass them. I think that was like one of the headlines, and that like went off. And then they're like, no, that's actually that area is just heavily dominated by females, but males and females are throwing things at each other at like an equal rate. But yeah, so but yeah, there's just so much cool research happening right now. I'm trying to think of more, but that's all I can think of right now that I'm interested in.
Awesome. That's so cool. So what does Octonation have in the future coming up? What do you hope to do over the next couple years with the largest octopus fan club?
Yeah, so what a win for us is obviously people knowing about all the different species and getting interested in kind of like finding their way and mapping their wonder to the ocean through the lens of an octopus. Because we really feel like if you can initially have this central focus and fall in love with something in it, you can like anchor your love for the ocean through something that you're just like, oh, we have to protect it because my favorite animal lives in it. And I feel like that's a more sustainable way to develop a relationship with the ocean than showing massive pollution or widespread, mistreatment of animals or all these different things. And so we like truly inspire wonder of the ocean by educating the world about octopuses, and we'll never kind of backhandedly say, well, if you love the ocean, then you would do X, Y, Z. And so we're staying in the educational lane and just, like I said, talking about certain behaviors and things, making them as relatable as possible, so that when people go out there in the world, and you've seen all of our merch, like we have so much really cool illustrative merch, that they can like I don't know, show off their merch and then also educate about the species, and then, I don't know, just go forth and get people interested in the ocean. I feel like we have to come up with new and unique ways to get people interested in the ocean. Obviously, social media is a really cool way to get kids interested.
Absolutely.
So it's just kind of thinking of different campaigns, like that we do Interview with an Octopus, but we want to kind of like bring back Interview with an Octopus, but with a celebrity. There's so many opportunities to just introduce, and by introducing, somebody to the octopus, you're introducing their audience to the octopus.
Yeah.
And so it's just a really cool way to think about, how can you show the wonder of the octopus to somebody, because they are fascinating. Even when you're interacting with them, it's so surprising how strong their suckers are. And what I found is that when people meet them for the first time, it's like a life-changing thing.
Absolutely.
Right? And so just trying to think of more campaigns. We have some interesting work coming out with National Geographic this next year, so look out for that.
That's exciting.
And some work with Guinness Book of World Records.
Awesome.
There's a lot of really cool documentaries coming out that are profiling individual species. So look for their stories to be told on the big screen pretty soon.
Ooh.
I know you just said that you don't backhandedly slip in a conservation message for the octopus, but for our listeners who really do want to help out octopus, what is your one overarching way that people can help animals out in the ocean?
Yeah. So I would say that first, educate yourself just about like them and get really interested, and then kind of see what organizations have volunteer opportunities. I was just asking, Madeline, what does the volunteer look like here at Aquarium of the Pacific? And they said that there's an incredible program here, right?
Yeah, there is.
Right?
You
And
can
so
come work with
there's
us.
all these opportunities. You have to figure out like, what is your interest, and it's okay to like have this singular focus and go in and say, what can I do? Is there an opportunity to intern for social media just as it relates to an animal? Is there like, how can you make your mark in your own unique way? For me, I found out, that it was being the PR agent for the octopus. but for other people, they might want to do, I don't know, like Cuttlefish Nation, or they
Yeah.
might want to do.
You
their own
actually
thing.
recommended it because I told you the first time we met, like, I love octopuses, of course, but cuttlefish kind of have my
Yeah,
heart.
they're
You're like,
super
you should
cute.
start Cuttlefish Nation. I'm like, I got enough going on.
Aw.
But
Cuddle Nation.
Cuddle Nation.
I think that could be a subsection of Octonation, Cuddle
Yeah.
Nation.
It's just finding your own unique, flair when it comes
Yeah.
to conservation, and really figuring out what really inspires you, because the fact of the matter is when you're more inspired, it's infectious, and people, it'll rub off. I know that for me, when I'm talking about the octopus to people, they always tell me, they're like, I just love how lit up you are about
Yeah.
this.
You really do.
And by like you lighting up, it just makes me, it's like I've never heard octopus in like this
Yeah.
length of time. They're like, I'll definitely consider it more. And I think that's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if we can get people to consider the ocean more, then we have a chance at saving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your enthusiasm is contagious. Like, I am so excited about octopus. I'm like, I'm going to go look up every species of octopus. And I really feel like that's really the heart of conservation work, is making people care about things and showing how much you care about something and telling them why you care about it. And just being excited is the best way to get people to fall in love with the different animals, the ocean. And at the aquarium, we have different volunteer opportunities. You can volunteer with our education department, and you can be the one on the floor telling people about these amazing animals. We even have volunteers, which are really cute to see these like really young teenagers talking very excitedly and way more knowledgeably about some of the animals and knowing things I don't even know. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And
Yeah.
I think just make your mark in whatever way feels right for you, and that's really great advice.
Yeah.
We were walking around the aquarium before we started recording, and we ran into Diana, who's a charter volunteer, and she was just gushing about the octopus. And I was like, I work here, Diana. Like, you don't have to put this on. And she's like, no, I'm so happy that I'm up here and I get the chance today to be in front of the octopus habitat. It was really special.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't even just because Warren was there.
She's a little bit. She was like, Warren's here.
I love it.
Yeah, but just, I guess, learning about all the different species and learning about their, like, for me, it was just like, wow, these animals have been on this planet for hundreds of millions of years. Like, they've survived through mass extinctive events on this planet. For the longest time when I was growing up, I saw there was a lot of emphasis and focus on animals that were going extinct. And I always thought, like, it's really interesting to me that the octopus represents to me adaptability, resiliency, like problem solving. It's like maybe like why don't we focus in on an animal that has stood the test of time and really learn from how they've figured it out? And what's interesting to me is just like how they figured it out in every single environment on planet Earth, like underwater. So like the Antarctic octopus has antifreeze proteins in its skin that allow it to survive in like sub-zero temperatures. You have a hot water volcano octopus that lives next to underwater hydrothermal vents, like 200-degree plumes of toxic gaseous, where seawater meets magma, and they're just happy, down there.
So cool.
It's just like so everywhere you go, it's just like you run into an animal that's like just figured it out. And I think that there's something to be said about just the wonder that is the ocean. It's like you have all these things that literally have figured it out, and to me that was just fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, what are we going to do together next? We're going to do more interviews with an octopus?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
interview
You got to
an
meet
octopus.
Goji.
Have to meet Goji.
Yeah.
Yes.
Warren, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find us if you go to octopusfanclub.com, that's our Facebook group, but we're just Octonation on every single social media platform.
Thank you, Warren, so much. This was so much fun. Thanks for
sure.
coming down to the Aquarium of the Pacific to talk to us on Aquarium of the Podcific today.
Thank you.
Aquarium of the Podcific is brought to you by Aquarium of the Pacific, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. In 2023, the aquarium celebrates 25 years of connecting millions of people worldwide to the beauty and wonder of our ocean planet. Head to aquariumofpacific.org to learn more about our 25th anniversary celebration. Keep up with the aquarium on social media at Aquarium Pacific on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
This podcast is produced by Aaron Lundy, Madeline Walden, and Scott Shaw. Our music is by Andrew Reitzma, and our podcast art is by Brandy Kenny. Special thanks to Cecile Fisher, Anitza Valles, and our audiovisual and education departments, and to all of our amazing podcast guests for taking time out of their day to talk about the important work that they do. Podcific wouldn't be possible without the support of the aquarium's donors, members, guests, and supporters. Thanks for listening.